There's a moment, a pause, a shift, and they say, nothing. They don't respond, don't explain, don't react. And suddenly you're spiraling. This is silence as a weapon of power, a calculated withdrawal used to destabilize, punish, or regain control. You bring up a concern, they go mute. You set a boundary, they vanish. You express pain, they blink and go quiet. And now you're chasing. You double text. You apologize for your tone. You wonder if you're crazy for bringing it up at all. But this silence isn't about space. It's about superiority. They create distance, so you feel desperate. They say nothing, so your thoughts scream louder. They pull away, so you reach further. But here's the truth. Silence can be sacred. It can be healing. But in the hands of a manipulator, it's not space. It's control. And when their silence drowns your truth, you begin to believe the only way to stay close is to stay small. There's no line between your feelings and theirs. No separation. No space to breathe. This is emotional enmeshment, when your emotional world becomes fused with theirs until you can't tell who you are without them. It doesn't start violently. It starts with closeness, oversharing, needing you, always needing you. At first, it feels like intimacy. You're their person, their safe space, but slowly they stop managing their own pain and start handing it to you. They break down and you clean it up. They get angry and you soften. They're distant and you blame yourself. You become their mirror, their emotional babysitter, their therapist, their fixer, their container. And when you finally say, this is too much, they say, I thought you cared. So you stay. You absorb. You numb yourself just to hold them. But that's not love. That's fusion. And in fusion, your identity dissolves. You stop asking, how do I feel? And start asking, how do they feel? And what do I need to do to fix it? You weren't born to carry anyone else's pain. And if someone makes your worth dependent on their healing, they don't want a partner. They want a host. You're hurting. You express it. You feel brave enough to ask for change. And right then, they give you something. A gift, a hug, a date night, a kind word. It's small, but it feels massive because you've been starving for it. This is the token gesture trap, where manipulators offer crumbs of affection to reset the cycle of control. They don't address the problem. They just distract from it. You were ready to walk, and now you're melting. You were angry, and now you feel guilty. You were clear, and now you're confused. They're trying. It's not perfect, but look, they remembered. And in that moment, the memory of harm fades. The pattern resets, and you stay. But this isn't growth. It's pacification. Real healing doesn't come in sudden flowers after a storm. It comes in the absence of storms altogether. If they only show love when you're about to leave, it was never love. It was leverage. Every time you needed something, they rolled their eyes, dismissed you, laughed. So you learned not to need, not to ask, not to want. This is self-abandonment conditioning, the long-term psychological training that teaches you to silence yourself to survive. They didn't need to scream. They didn't need to hit. They just needed to look disappointed, or ignore you, or sigh and say, this again? So you began to adapt. You became easy, accommodating, low maintenance. You stopped asking for comfort, stopped expressing confusion, stopped showing pain, because every time you did, they punished you for it, not with violence, but with withdrawal. And now you've become the one who flinches before speaking, the one who overthinks every text, the one who apologizes for just existing. But you didn't become that way by accident. You were taught to betray yourself so they wouldn't have to. You start to feel like you owe them, not because of a contract, not because of logic, but because of everything they've done for you. This is learned obligation. When someone creates a sense of permanent indebtedness to maintain control, they bring up the past, the sacrifices, the favors. I was there for you when no one else was. Do you remember how much I gave up for this? You'd be nothing without me. It doesn't sound like control. It sounds like guilt. And now, your choices don't feel like yours anymore. You stop saying no. You stop asking for change. You stop imagining a different life, because that would make you ungrateful. But love doesn't require a receipt. Kindness doesn't come with strings. If someone uses their help as currency to buy your silence, they never helped you. They invested in you. So they could own the outcome. And obligation built on fear isn't loyalty, it's enslavement. What if you weren't the one making your decisions? What if your thoughts, your reactions, even your emotions weren't yours at all? This is the puppet strings, a form of manipulation so subtle you won't realize you're dancing until the show is almost over. At first, it feels harmless. Someone compliments you, laughs at your jokes, offers help when you're struggling. It feels good, natural, safe. But then something shifts. They start giving you just enough affection to keep you close, and just enough silence to keep you chasing. They praise you when you agree, withdraw when you don't, and without ever raising their voice, without ever giving a command, they train you like a puppet. This is how it works. They watch you carefully, quietly. They study what makes you feel good, what makes you anxious, what you'll do to avoid conflict. Then they pull. A small sigh when you bring up something uncomfortable. A quiet, "It's fine, don't worry about it," that makes you feel like you've disappointed them. A shift in energy that leaves you scrambling to fix something, even when you didn't do anything wrong. They don't need rules. They don't need threats. They just respond, and you adjust. That's the trick. They never tell you what to do. They just make you want to please them. Over time, your behavior changes. You stop expressing certain opinions. You start checking in before you make decisions. You apologize more. You hesitate more. You shrink. And the most terrifying part? You think it's your idea. You start believing you're being mature, that you're avoiding unnecessary drama, that you've simply grown out of conflict, but in reality, you've been rewired. This is how abusers keep control without ever seeming controlling. This is how toxic bosses lead without ever giving orders. This is how manipulators play the long game, not with force, but with feedback. Positive reinforcement when you obey, subtle punishment when you resist. You move, and they smile. You freeze, and they frown. You shift, and they nod. And every time you change to please them, the strings tighten. Until one day, you realize you're not reacting to life anymore. You're reacting to them. That's the moment you start to wake up. When you notice that your peace has been replaced with performance. When you recognize that your independence has been traded for approval, the puppet strings are real, and they don't come with knots or chains. They come with praise, with kindness, with, I'm just trying to help. But once you see them, you can cut them. And when you cut them, you stop dancing. Charm is easy to misunderstand. We think of it as a gift, a natural magnetism, a sparkle in the eyes, a voice that makes you feel safe, heard, special. But what if charm wasn't a gift at all? What if it was a weapon? This is how it begins. You meet someone and they just get you. They laugh at your jokes, remember tiny details, make you feel like the most interesting person in the room. They say things like, I've never connected with someone this fast. It's like we're the same person. You just get me. And it feels real, intoxicating, like destiny. But that's the trap. Because charm isn't always authentic. Sometimes it's a mask, a costume worn by people who want access, not connection. They're not showing you who they are. They're showing you what you want to see. That's what makes charm so effective. It bypasses your defenses. It feels good, safe, familiar. You start trusting them before they've earned it. This kind of charm isn't spontaneous. It's strategic. They mirror your interests, adopt your values. They validate your insecurities with just enough vulnerability to seem honest. But it's not honesty. It's engineering. They're building a version of themselves that's perfectly shaped to fit your emotional gaps. And once you're comfortable, once your guard is down, they start to move the pieces. They ask for favors, make subtle criticisms, undermine your confidence in ways that sound like compliments. You're so much smarter than your friends. I just worry you're too nice. People will take advantage of you. You're lucky to have me. No one else really sees you. And you believe them because they were so kind in the beginning, so charming. That's the trick. Charm creates credibility. And once they've earned your trust, they don't need to raise their voice. They can manipulate you gently, with a smile. They can lie without being questioned. They can hurt you and still get you to apologize. Because you don't want to believe someone so wonderful could ever mean harm. And that's the most dangerous part. The worst manipulators are never the ones who scream. They're the ones who whisper, the ones who compliment you before cutting you, the ones who make you laugh while slowly making you smaller. So how do you protect yourself? You watch for patterns. Not just how someone makes you feel in the moment, but how they change you over time. Do you feel stronger or more dependent, more free or more confused? Because real charm doesn't manipulate. Real charm doesn't hide motives. Real charm doesn't leave you questioning your own worth. If someone's affection feels like a drug, if it lifts you high but leaves you chasing, be careful. You might not be falling in love. You might be falling under control. Some rules are never spoken. They're not written down, not agreed on, not even conscious. But break them, and you'll feel it, the silence, the withdrawal, the shift in energy that tells you you did something wrong. These are invisible expectations, silent contracts you never signed, but are punished for breaking. It starts subtly. You don't text back fast enough. They get quiet. You cancel plans for a valid reason. They respond with guilt. You express a boundary. They say, I just didn't expect that from you. Nothing overt, nothing that feels like control. But suddenly, you're adjusting, responding quicker, saying yes when you want to say no, hesitating before being honest. Because somewhere along the way, you learned that certain behaviors will cost you connection, that if you don't meet their unspoken standards, they'll take something away. Their attention, their approval, their love. This is the power of invisible expectations. They don't need enforcement. They rely on your fear of disappointment. You become the enforcer. You silence yourself. You pre-correct. You live under a pressure you can't name, but always feel. And the worst part? When you finally speak up. When you say, I feel like I can't be myself around you. They deny everything. I never asked you to do that. You're overthinking. That's on you, not me. And technically, they're right. They never said anything. But that's what makes it so effective. Because if the rules are invisible, so is the blame. You're left questioning yourself, doubting your instincts, wondering if maybe you are just too sensitive. But here's the truth. Any relationship where your freedom feels like a threat, where honesty comes with consequences, where peace depends on performance, is not healthy. Love doesn't need rules to feel safe. Friendship doesn't need compliance to feel secure. Real connection makes space for you, even when you disappoint, even when you disagree. Invisible expectations create invisible prisons, and you don't escape them by being better. You escape them by realizing you were never wrong for being yourself. Some people don't demand power. They earn it with a tear in their eye and a story you can't ignore. This is the sympathy trap, a form of manipulation that hides behind pain. It begins with vulnerability, tragedy, trauma, real or invented. They tell you they've been hurt, abandoned, betrayed. They show you their scars, emotional, sometimes physical, and you care. You listen. You comfort. You let your guard down, because who would fake something so raw? But then the stories don't stop. The pain becomes a pattern. And slowly, your role changes. You're no longer a friend. You're a caretaker, a therapist, a shield. They lean on you more, expect more, drain more. And if you ever try to step back, if you need space, if you say no just once, you're met with silence, with tears, with lines like, everyone leaves me. I thought you were different. I guess I was wrong about you. Suddenly, you're the villain, and they're the wounded soul. Once again, this is the trap. It's not about affection. It's about control through compassion. Because when someone makes their suffering your responsibility, you stop focusing on how they treat you. You start focusing on how to fix them. And in doing so, you forget yourself. You excuse behavior you wouldn't tolerate from anyone else. You stay longer, give more, accept less. Because how could you abandon someone who's hurting? But here's the truth. Real pain doesn't need a performance. Real healing doesn't punish your boundaries. And real vulnerability doesn't weaponize your kindness. If you feel guilty for protecting your peace, if you're afraid to walk away because they might fall apart, you're not helping them. You're just keeping yourself trapped. Sympathy can be sacred, but when it's used as a leash, it's not empathy anymore. It's exploitation. Some people don't interrupt. They don't argue. They don't correct you. They listen quietly, lovingly, but not because they care,
because they're collecting. This is weaponized listening. When attention isn't about understanding, it's about ammunition. You open up. You share your fears, your past, your insecurities. You feel safe, heard, seen. But behind the silence is strategy. They're memorizing your wounds, not to heal them, to use them. Later, when things go wrong, they'll know exactly what to say to break you. No wonder your last partner left you. You always say you're not enough. Maybe you're right. Didn't you tell me you have abandonment issues? This is just that. They don't need to raise their voice. They just use your voice against you. And it works. Because the words came from you. The pain was yours. They just repackaged it. It feels personal, precise, tailored to your deepest fears. Because it is. So how do you protect yourself? You don't have to stop sharing, but you must watch how people treat your truth. Do they hold it gently, or do they sharpen it? Do they soothe you when you're vulnerable, or remind you of it when you resist? Weaponized listeners don't need power. They just need access. And once they have it, they don't pull you apart. They let you do it, one confession at a time.
Not all abuse is explosive. Not all control is obvious. Sometimes it happens so slowly you don't realize you're melting until there's nothing left. This is the slow burn, the kind of manipulation that wears you down, not all at once, but piece by piece. It starts with small things. You laugh at a joke that feels slightly off. They criticize you, but call it teasing. You speak up and they say, "You're so sensitive." You feel a little worse after every interaction, but not bad enough to leave, not loud enough to label. That's the strategy. Because if they yelled, if they pushed too far, too fast, you'd notice, you'd run. But this is slow, low heat. The compliments become rare. The connection feels earned instead of given. And your confidence, it begins to shrink. Until one day, you're constantly overthinking, constantly apologizing, constantly unsure if you're the problem. The pain isn't sharp, it's chronic. A background hum that makes you tired, resentful, anxious, but too drained to do anything about it. And that's the point. The slow burn leaves no visible scars, only silence. But your body knows. Your mind knows. Something is off. You're just waiting for the words to explain it. And this is them.
Trust takes time to build, but manipulators don't have time. So they cheat. This is trust hacking, a method of fast-tracking intimacy for control. They overshare early, tell you their darkest secrets, cry in front of you, say, "I've never told anyone this before." It feels raw. It feels special. So you open up too, because that's how trust works, right? But what you don't realize is that their vulnerability was a test, a calculated move, a shortcut. They weren't being real. They were being strategic. They gave you something intimate so you'd feel safe, giving something valuable, your loyalty, your attention, your silence. And once you're in, they lock the door. Now, if you pull away, you're the one who's heartless. You're the one who broke the trust. But it was never trust. It was a transaction. And you didn't agree to it. You just fell for it. The antidote? Recognize that speed isn't always sincerity. Real trust isn't earned through moments. It's built over patterns. And no one who forces closeness is trying to hold you. They're trying to trap you. It's easy to fall for people who are just like us. Same humor, same beliefs, same wounds. But what if that sameness is fake? This is the mirror lie. When someone reflects your identity back at you, not to connect, but to control. At first, it's magical. You say you love obscure books. They've read them all. You open up about your childhood. They've been through the same thing. Your goals, your fears, your favorite songs. They match, almost perfectly. But pay attention. Their personality shifts depending on who they're with. They always agree, but never challenge. They never reveal anything that doesn't serve your image of them. That's not intimacy. That's performance. And once they become exactly what you want, you start depending on them. You trust faster. You love deeper. But they're not real. They're a mirror. And eventually, the reflection breaks. The kindness turns cold. The interests disappear. The mask slips. And you're left wondering, who were they, really? How did I not see it sooner? Because you didn't fall for a person. You fell for a version of yourself. And that's what made it so easy. Affection is powerful. Attention can feel like oxygen. But when it's used to manipulate, it becomes a drug. This is emotional doping. When someone floods you with intense highs to create dependence, the connection is instant. The feelings are overwhelming. The praise is nonstop. You feel seen, understood, lit up from the inside out. And then they pull back. No warning, no explanation. You go from being the center of their universe to begging for a reply. You try to get the magic back, replaying conversations, overanalyzing every word. But nothing works, because the point wasn't to love you. The point was to get you hooked. It's the same mechanism as addiction, the high followed by the crash, then the craving, then the chase. This is how people stay in toxic relationships. This is how emotional manipulators gain loyalty, not through kindness, but through withdrawal. If you're constantly trying to earn the affection you once had, if love feels more like a reward than a feeling, you're not in a relationship, you're in a system, and systems are built for control.
They don't show up with a demand. They show up with a rescue. This is the savior complex manipulator, someone who gains control by saving you from a problem, often one they quietly created. At first, it feels like kindness. They fix things. They offer advice. They always seem to swoop in right when you need them. You feel grateful. You feel seen. You start to depend on them. But over time, you realize you're always the one being saved, and they're always the one holding the rope. They subtly sabotage your confidence, then rebuild it on their terms. They create emotional storms, then become the umbrella. They break you just enough to be the one who puts you back together. And every time you rely on them, the leash tightens, because the real goal was never to help. It was to make sure you need them. And if you ever try to stand on your own, you'll hear it in their voice. After everything I've done for you, you wouldn't be here if it weren't for me. Helping becomes guilt. Support becomes control. And you realize they didn't save you to lift you up. They saved you so they could keep you.
They say they hate drama, but drama follows them, or maybe it doesn't follow them. Maybe they create it. This is manufactured chaos. The act of creating instability so you cling to the person who caused it. It starts with confusion, misunderstandings, conflicts that seem to come from nowhere. One day they're warm, the next ice cold. You ask what's wrong, and they say, nothing. You're just overthinking again. You walk on eggshells, trying not to trigger another shift. You over-apologize. You stay quiet, just to keep the peace. But there is no peace, because peace is the threat. Peace means clarity. Clarity means power, and they can't risk you having any. So they stir the pot, make vague accusations, twist your words, create tension, then position themselves as the only one who gets it. They control the weather, then offer you the umbrella. But you can only stay dry if you stay with them. And that's the trap. They break your world, so they can become the only thing holding it together. You bring up a concern, you notice a pattern, you share a feeling. And the response? You're crazy. That never happened. You're being dramatic. This is the you're crazy defense, a form of gaslighting so subtle it rewrites reality in real time. It doesn't take much. Just a raised eyebrow, a smirk, a tone that says, wow, you really think that? Suddenly, you feel like the unstable one. You second-guess the words you just said. You replay moments. You apologize, even when you know you were right, because they framed the conversation not around what happened, but around your sanity. If they can convince you that your emotions are irrational, they don't have to address what caused them. And once they plant that seed, it grows. You hesitate before speaking. You keep things in. You stop trusting your own mind. And that's exactly the point. When they control the narrative, they don't have to defend themselves. They just discredit you. They don't insult you directly. That would be too obvious. Instead, they plant seeds. This is strategic insecurity planting, when someone subtly makes you doubt yourself. So you'll rely on them to feel whole. They say things like, "Are you sure you want to wear that? Wow, you really ate all of that? That's cute. I just didn't know you were into that kind of thing." The words are casual. The tone is light, but the effect is heavy. You start second-guessing your choices, questioning your worth, looking at yourself through their eyes, and then they offer the fix. You look better when I style you. You should just let me handle that stuff. Don't worry, I'll keep you on track. They break you just enough to offer themselves as the solution. And the worst part, you thank them for it. Because by the time the damage shows, you've already accepted their version of better. Rewards aren't always earned. Sometimes they're conditioned. This is positive reinforcement for compliance. When someone gives you affection, praise, or attention only when you obey, it looks like love. It feels like appreciation. But it's a transaction. You do what they want. They smile. You push back. They go cold. Over time, you learn the rules. Don't disagree. Don't ask questions. Don't say no. Because when you follow the script, you're rewarded. When you don't, you're punished. Silently, subtly, but consistently. It's the same method used in dog training, in cults, in authoritarian parenting, in toxic relationships. You become less of a person and more of a performer. You forget what you actually want. You just learn what keeps them happy. And the scariest part, eventually you start rewarding yourself for obedience. You smile when they approve. You feel ashamed when they don't. And in doing so, you become the one holding your own leash. You're in conflict, but instead of resolution, they bring in someone else. This is triangulation, a manipulation tactic where a third person is used to control the dynamic between two others. At first, it seems harmless. They mention what someone else thinks about you. They bring in an outsider's opinion. They pit people against each other, quietly, strategically. Even Sarah said you're too emotional sometimes. I talked to James, and he agrees you overreacted. Everyone thinks I'm the one being patient. Suddenly, you're not just defending yourself. You're defending your reputation. You start wondering who else is talking about you. Who else thinks this way? Who else you've lost without knowing it? And that's the trick. It's not about resolution. It's about isolation. You're not confronting them anymore. You're confronting a crowd they've invented. And if you react with anger, sadness, or confusion, they step back and say, "See? This is what I mean. It's a trap with no way out." Because they've rewritten the narrative to make you the problem and themselves the victim, supported by invisible witnesses. Triangulation fractures trust, not just between you and them, but between you and everyone else. That way, they stay at the center, while you spin in confusion. Some people don't correct you in private. They wait for an audience. This is public shaming, a form of psychological punishment meant to humiliate, silence, and assert dominance. It happens in jokes, in group settings, in sarcastic comments that cut just a little too deep. "Oh, you're trying that again." Someone's in their feelings today. We all know how you get. People laugh. You smile awkwardly, but something inside you cracks, because it wasn't just a joke. It was exposure, a private insecurity, placed under public light. And if you try to defend yourself, you're too sensitive. You can't take a joke. You always make things awkward, so you stop defending yourself. You stay quiet. You let it slide. But each time, your confidence shrinks, your voice fades, and they grow bolder. Because shame isn't about correction. It's about control through embarrassment. And once they teach you that speaking up comes with pain, you'll stop trying altogether. You left. You broke free. You walked away. But they come back. This is hoovering, like the vacuum, sucking you back in with false hope, apologies, and promises of change. It starts with a message. "I've been thinking about you. I've changed. Can we talk?" They say everything you've been waiting to hear. They sound softer, smarter, more aware. They say they miss you, that they've been doing the work, that they just need one more chance. But here's what they don't say. They don't say they miss controlling you. They don't say they miss the access. They don't say they want to fix things on their terms only. Because hoovering isn't about healing. It's about resetting the cycle. Once you're close again, the same patterns return, the same pain. But now it's harder to leave, because now you've doubted yourself. Maybe they really were trying. Maybe I gave up too fast. You didn't. You broke the cycle, but they're trying to restart it. And that's why hoovering is so dangerous. It doesn't look like manipulation. It looks like love. You feel confused, like you're living in two realities. One moment, they're kind. The next, cruel. They say they love you, but hurt you. They build you up, then tear you down, and still you stay. Still, you try to make sense of it. This is cognitive dissonance, the mental tension that happens when your brain tries to hold two opposing truths at once. They're good to me. They're hurting me. I'm happy. I'm exhausted. To reduce the discomfort, your mind picks one. So you excuse their behavior. You rationalize. You reframe abuse as love. They didn't mean it. They're just stressed. I can't judge them by one bad day, but the days add up. The bruises, emotional or otherwise, build, and you don't see it because your brain won't let you. That's the trap. Cognitive dissonance keeps you stuck, not because you don't know what's happening, but because you can't hold the truth without breaking. And so you bend. But eventually, something snaps. And when it does, clarity feels like grief, because you weren't just lied to. You were lying to yourself. Your brain is wired to connect, to feel what others feel, to reflect what you see. This is called mirror neurons. The reason you flinch when someone gets hurt. The reason you cry when someone else cries. But manipulators use this against you. This is exploiting mirror neurons. Triggering empathy to lower your defenses. They show sadness when they're not sad. They express remorse when they feel none. They mimic pain, regret, joy, fear, not to share emotion, but to manipulate yours. You feel what they feel, so you help. You forgive. You stay. Because your brain can't tell the difference between real emotion and rehearsed emotion. It just responds. And they know that. So they cry when you try to leave. They flinch when you raise a concern. They break down when they're losing control. And you absorb it. Feel it. Take responsibility for fixing it. But they weren't being vulnerable. They were being strategic. When someone constantly breaks your heart with their performance, ask yourself, is this real emotion? Or is it just a script written for an audience of one? Empathy is your gift. It helps you connect, understand, love. But in the wrong hands, it becomes your weakness. This is exploiting empathy. When someone weaponizes your compassion to escape accountability, they cry, but never change. They apologize, but only when you're ready to leave. They tell you how hard it's been for them to distract from the hurt they've caused you. You feel bad for them, even when you're the one in pain, and that's the trap. They flip the spotlight. So you stop asking, why did you hurt me? And start asking, how can I help you feel better? It's no longer about truth. It's about soothing the person who broke it. You carry their guilt, their shame, their weight, until one day you forget which pain was yours and which one they gave you. Empathy is sacred, but if you keep bleeding for people who won't even bandage their own wounds, you'll drain yourself dry. Sometimes control doesn't come through demands. It comes through gifts, a favor, a gesture, an act of kindness. At first, it feels generous. They go out of their way for you, do something unexpected, make a sacrifice. But there's an edge to it, unspoken, heavy, because soon after, they ask for something back. After everything I've done for you, can't you just do this one thing? Wow. I guess I misjudged how loyal you are. This is creating a sense of obligation, making you feel indebted for something you never asked for. And it works. Because most people don't want to seem ungrateful. Most people don't want to owe someone and not pay it back. So you comply. You agree. You shrink. not because you want to, but because it feels like the right thing to do. But kindness with strings isn't kindness. It's control, dressed as generosity. If someone gives with expectation, they didn't give. They invested. And now they're collecting. The easiest way to control a group is to turn it against itself. This is divide and conquer, a tactic used by manipulators to isolate, destabilize, and rule from the shadows. They plant subtle doubts. You know she was talking about you, right? I'm not trying to stir things up, but they don't really have your back. At first, you ignore it, but the seed is planted. Now, you second-guess conversations. You start to withdraw. You become easier to manipulate because now you don't have support. They do this with friend groups, families, work teams, online communities. They fracture unity so they can become the glue, the trusted one, the middleman, the only one who understands. And once everyone is isolated, they pull the strings. No one compares notes. No one unites. No one sees the full picture. Because the chaos is the strategy, and they are its calm center. We're taught to trust authority. Doctors, leaders, experts, anyone who sounds certain. But certainty isn't always truth, and titles don't always mean trust. This is authority bias, the tendency to believe someone simply because they appear powerful. They speak with confidence. They use complex language. They reference data, science, or research without showing any of it. And we believe them, even when it contradicts what we know, even when it doesn't feel right. Because challenging authority takes effort, takes discomfort, takes thinking for yourself. And many people don't. That's why cult leaders thrive, why fake coaches and mentors manipulate, why corrupt officials go unchecked. Not because they're smart, but because they sound like they are. Authority bias doesn't just shut down skepticism, it replaces it with obedience. And in the hands of a manipulator, obedience becomes surrender. There's a moment in every toxic system where blame becomes a game, and someone always loses. This is scapegoating, assigning blame to one person to protect the dysfunction of the whole. It happens in families, friend groups, religious communities, workplaces. One person is labeled too much, too dramatic, too difficult, not because they are, but because they see too clearly, speak too honestly, refuse to play along. The group turns, the whispers start, the isolation begins, and over time, that person starts to believe it. They ask, am I really the problem? Why can't I just get along? Maybe I deserve this. But scapegoating isn't about truth. It's about power. It keeps the group's flaws hidden by placing all the tension on one back. So, if you've ever felt like the black sheep, if your silence was seen as hostility and your truth as betrayal, you weren't the problem. You were just the one they couldn't control. If everyone's doing it, it must be right, right? This is social proof exploitation, using the illusion of consensus to manipulate behavior. It's why fake testimonials work, why crowds follow confidence, why people believe lies, if enough people repeat them. The brain is wired for survival, and in the wild, following the tribe kept us alive. But in the wrong hands, that instinct gets hijacked. You see a long line outside a restaurant and assume it's good. You hear applause and start clapping, even if you didn't enjoy it. You see a post with 1 million likes and believe what it says without question. Now imagine that applied to beliefs, to relationships, to politics. When everyone around you says, it's fine, it's always been this way, stop overreacting, you start to doubt your gut, you conform, and that's the trap. Because manipulators know they don't need to convince you. They just need to convince enough people around you, and the rest will follow. You're in a group, a team, a community, and something feels off. But no one speaks up. So, neither do you. This is groupthink induction, a form of psychological pressure that makes you suppress your doubts for the sake of harmony. You don't want to be the problem, the disruptor, the negative one. So you nod. You agree. You stay quiet, even when your body's screaming, this isn't right. It starts small. A sketchy idea no one questions. A red flag everyone ignores. And by the time it grows too big to ignore, it's already too late. Because silence isn't just passivity. In groups, silence becomes agreement. Manipulators love this. They create environments where dissent is punished and blind loyalty is praised. And in that silence, truth dies. One awkward laugh at a time. You used to be sure of who you were. Now, not so much. Your tastes have changed. Your opinions bend. Your goals shift depending on who you're with. This is cultivating false identity. When someone gradually replaces your personality with a version more convenient for them, it doesn't happen all at once. It's slow. So slow you call it growth. But look closer. You start liking their music, quoting their phrases, dressing the way they like, dismissing the parts of yourself they subtly mocked. They never told you to change, but you did. To keep the peace, to feel closer, to be loved. And now you don't recognize yourself. That's the trick. They didn't fall in love with you. They sculpted you into someone easier to control. And you let them. Not because you were weak, but because you thought it was love. But real love doesn't erase you. It expands you. Anything else is control. They never say you're worthless. That would be too obvious. Instead, they ask questions. Are you sure that's the best idea? You really think you're qualified for that? Do you honestly believe they like you? Small, innocent, easy to dismiss, but they stick. You start hesitating before speaking, before applying, before trusting yourself. Because now, the voice in your head sounds like them. This is planting the seeds of self-doubt, a method of erosion so quiet, you think it's your own voice doing the damage. But it's not. It was implanted, watered, nurtured. Every time you showed confidence and they responded with skepticism. And now, you question everything. Your worth, your instincts, your right to take up space. And they don't have to silence you anymore. You're already doing it to yourself. Emotions spread. Joy, anger, fear. We catch feelings like viruses just by being near someone who's infected. This is emotional contagion exploitation. When someone uses their mood to hijack yours, they enter a room and suddenly the energy changes. They sigh and everyone feels tense. They act cold and everyone scrambles to fix it. They don't say anything. They don't need to. Their emotions become the thermostat, and everyone else becomes the weather. You find yourself adjusting, smiling when they're smiling, panicking when they're silent, calming them down even when you're the one who was hurt. Because they've trained you to regulate them, to mirror them, to sacrifice your stability for their comfort. And over time, you don't know what you're feeling anymore, only what they've made you feel. That's not empathy. That's emotional control. You think you're choosing. You think you're in control. But what if every option you were given was designed to lead you to the same outcome? This is the illusion of choice, a manipulation tactic where freedom is fabricated to make obedience feel empowering. You're offered two paths. One sounds awful. The other, palatable, comfortable, familiar. You pick the second, and you feel safe. You feel independent. But you don't realize both paths were theirs. Both answers serve them. This happens in toxic relationships. You can stay, and we work on this, or you leave and destroy everything we've built. It happens in business, in politics, in marketing. They present the illusion of freedom when what you're really choosing is how to lose. To recognize it, ask yourself, did I create these choices, or am I picking between cages that were built for me? Because freedom isn't about picking from a list. It's about walking away from the list entirely. They want you to agree to something, a price, a favor, a deal. But first, they show you something worse, something outrageous, too expensive, too demanding. You say no, naturally. Then they offer you a reasonable version. You say yes, gratefully. But here's what just happened. You didn't agree because it was fair. You agreed because of contrast. This is the anchoring effect. A cognitive bias where your judgment is shaped by whatever you saw first. The anchor skews your perspective. And manipulators know this. They give you a number, a story, a demand, just to make the next one seem better. But neither was good. One was just less awful. So you take it, not because you want it, but because it feels like a deal. And the moment you accept it, they've won. Not by force, but by framing. You're told the surgery has a 90% survival rate. You feel relieved. You're told the same surgery has a 10% mortality rate. You feel afraid. The fact hasn't changed. Only the frame. This is framing effect manipulation. The art of controlling your reaction by controlling how information is presented. They tell half the story, use emotional language, hide facts in context. You're overreacting. I only raised my voice once, but forgets to mention it was during your panic attack. I've never laid a hand on you, but conveniently leaves out the verbal destruction. It's not what they say. It's how they say it. And suddenly, you start doubting your feelings. You question whether you're being fair, but you're not reacting to lies. You're reacting to angles. The truth didn't disappear. It was just painted in softer colors. That's what framing does. It turns fire into candlelight. So you stop running from the heat. You believe something, and then you start seeing it everywhere. Articles, videos, conversations. They all prove your belief is right. But are you searching for truth or just collecting evidence? This is confirmation bias reinforcement. The tendency to notice only what supports your belief and ignore what doesn't. It's not just a mental quirk. It's a weapon. Manipulators feed you content that aligns with your fears. They repeat your insecurities back to you. They create echo chambers where everyone thinks the same. And every time you see proof, your belief gets stronger, even if it's wrong. even if it's dangerous. That's how conspiracies grow, how prejudice survives, how toxic partners convince you that you're the problem. You've been trained to see the world a certain way, and now you filter everything through that lens. But a mirror isn't the same as a window. An echo isn't truth. Sometimes the scariest thing is being wrong and never knowing it. You learn a new word, then suddenly you hear it everywhere. Coincidence or something deeper? This is the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, also known as frequency illusion. When your brain becomes aware of something, it starts noticing it more, and this can be used against you. Manipulators mention an idea, a product, a problem, then you start seeing it. Advertisements, posts, stories. It feels like fate, like a sign, but it's not fate, it's priming. They planted the thought, and now you're reinforcing it on your own. You think you're observing, you're actually being led. This is how fear spreads, how trends explode, how false narratives take root. You're not crazy. Your brain is just doing what it does, noticing what it's been trained to find. And if you're not careful, you'll confuse repetition with truth and build beliefs out of patterns that were planted. You meet someone new. They speak like you, move like you, laugh when you laugh. It feels comfortable, effortless, like you've known them forever. But what if that connection was crafted? This is mirroring and matching, the subtle imitation of behavior to build trust and rapport. It's often unconscious, but when used intentionally, it's powerful. Manipulators mirror your body language, match your tone, repeat your words, and your brain, craving familiarity, responds with connection. You trust them faster, open up deeper, feel seen, understood, safe. But it's not empathy. It's performance. A psychological trick to lower your defenses and make you think, they're just like me. And if they're like you, how could they hurt you? That's the lie. They don't need to be you. They just need to look like you, long enough to get what they want. And by the time you realize the reflection was fake, you've already given too much. They let you lead. At first, they match your energy, your rhythm, your language. You feel aligned, connected. Then slowly, they begin to shift. They introduce ideas, redirect the conversation, change the pace, and you follow. This is pacing and leading, a communication technique used to build agreement, then steer behavior. It's often used in sales, in therapy, in negotiations, but in the wrong hands, it's manipulation. They earn your trust by aligning with you, then lead you where they want you to go. You don't notice the transition because it feels natural, familiar, like a dance. But by the end, you're moving to a rhythm that isn't yours, saying yes to things you didn't plan to, believing things you once questioned, not because you were forced, but because you were led. Certain words make you feel things, safe, excited, afraid. Now imagine those words are being used to shape your thoughts. Without you realizing it, this is neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, a system of using language, patterns, and behavior modeling to influence thoughts and actions. Some people use it for personal growth, but others use it to manipulate. They embed commands inside compliments, use repetition to rewire beliefs, anchor emotions to certain gestures or phrases. You're such a strong person, and strong people always find it easy to say yes. You're the type of person who loves taking action. You probably don't even realize how fast you're relaxing right now. It sounds harmless, but it's surgical because NLP doesn't speak to logic. It speaks to your subconscious. And if someone can access that, they don't have to argue. They just have to plant the seed, and your mind will grow it for them. You didn't hear it, not clearly, but you felt it. A word, a flash, a suggestion. This is subliminal messaging, sending signals below the threshold of conscious awareness to influence your thinking. In advertising, it's a flash of text. In media, it's a barely audible whisper. In manipulation, it's a quiet cue, repeated just enough to change your behavior. It bypasses your defenses because you don't know what's happening. But your brain registers it, processes it, integrates it. You feel nudged, drawn, unsettled, and you don't know why. Manipulators love subliminal tools because you can't argue with what you don't consciously perceive. And by the time the suggestion becomes a decision, it feels like your own. You see the word yellow. Then someone asks, name a fruit. You say banana. That wasn't chance. That was priming. A psychological effect where exposure to one thing subtly influences your response to another. Manipulators use this constantly. They frame your mind before making a request. They show you success stories before pitching their idea. They tell you stories of betrayal before asking for trust. Your brain, primed with certain emotions, becomes easier to steer, and you won't notice because the setup feels irrelevant, disconnected, but it's not, it's design. Priming creates the emotional conditions for manipulation to work. It makes yes feel easier, no feel rude, doubt feel unsafe. And just like that, you're making decisions in a state they engineered. You're not being told what to do. You're being invited, gently, subtly. You might notice how easy it is to keep listening. Maybe part of you already feels different. What if it just felt natural to say yes? This is suggestive language, the core of conversational hypnosis. It doesn't bark commands, it whispers possibilities, and your brain, trying to make sense of the suggestion, begins to respond. Your resistance drops, your awareness narrows, and suddenly you're following cues you didn't know were planted, because suggestion speaks to the subconscious. It doesn't push, it nudges. Like leading a dream with soft hands. And in skilled hands, suggestion becomes control. Not because they forced you, but because you allowed it, without knowing you had. You feel rushed, panicked, cornered. This deal won't last. If you don't act now, it'll be too late. Everyone else already said yes, you're the last one. This is creating a sense of urgency, a manipulation tactic designed to bypass your logic by engaging your fear. Fear of missing out, fear of being too slow, fear of being left behind. And when fear enters the decision, caution disappears. You stop asking questions. You skip the fine print. You say yes, just to escape the pressure. It feels like a time-sensitive choice, but it's not. It's a manufactured crisis, because urgency is the enemy of reflection, and manipulators don't want you to think, they want you to react. They ask for something small, a favor, a quick call, a few minutes of your time. You say yes, no big deal. Then they ask for more. This is the foot in the door technique, a manipulation strategy that builds compliance one small step at a time. You agree once, then again, and again, and soon, you're saying yes to things you never would have agreed to up front. because your mind wants to stay consistent. You've already helped. You've already said yes. Backing out now feels awkward, even wrong. So you keep going. Deeper. Further. Not because you're convinced, but because you're conditioned. The first step wasn't the goal. It was the hook. And now, you're on the line. They ask for something outrageous. Huge, unreasonable. You say no. Of course. Then they ask for something smaller. Something reasonable. And you say yes. That's door in the face. A reverse tactic from foot in the door. It works because your brain wants to be fair. You feel bad for rejecting the first request. So when they compromise, you reward them by complying. Even if you didn't want to. Even if the second ask was still too much. Because compared to the first, it felt light. Doable. Polite to accept. But the first ask? It was never real. It was bait. To make the second one feel like a gift. And you felt grateful for the trick. They offer you a deal, a promise, a price that seems too good to be true. You agree. You commit. Then after your commitment, they change the terms. There's just a small fee. We forgot to mention, it's still a great value, right? You're already invested. Already said yes. So you justify it. You move forward anyway. This is lowballing. A tactic used to trap decisions by securing agreement before revealing the full cost. Your mind wants to stay congruent, to avoid conflict, to protect the illusion that you made a smart choice. So you accept the new terms, even when they feel wrong, even when you know you've been tricked, because starting over feels worse. That's the lowball trap. It uses your own pride to keep you stuck. You look around, everyone seems to agree. Everyone is doing it. So, maybe you should too. This is the bandwagon effect. The tendency to adopt beliefs or behaviors simply because others are doing it. It doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like consensus, like truth. But here's the manipulation. They manufacture the crowd. Fake reviews, planted followers, strategic applause. And you join in. Not because you truly believe, but because you don't want to be left behind. Because the fear of being wrong alone is stronger than the fear of being wrong together. And once the bandwagon starts rolling, few people stop to ask who built it. Only a few left. This opportunity is rare. People would kill to have this. Scarcity sells. Not because it's true, but because your brain is wired to fear loss more than it values gain. This is creating a sense of scarcity, a tactic that triggers urgency and impulsivity by making something seem limited. In relationships, it sounds like, you'll never find someone who loves you like I do. I'm the only one who puts up with this. In sales, it's artificial limits, deadlines that reset, inventory that never really runs out. But it doesn't have to be real. It just has to feel real. Because when something seems scarce, you stop evaluating its worth and start fearing you'll miss it. Scarcity isn't about value. It's about panic. And panic is where manipulation thrives. Some people can sit with uncertainty. Most can't. This is exploiting the need for closure, using ambiguity to push people into decisions they wouldn't otherwise make. It begins with silence, ghosting, unanswered questions. You ask what's wrong. They dodge. You ask for clarity. They delay. And your brain starts spinning. You replay conversations, overanalyze texts, make excuses for them just to fill the gap. And finally, when they give you a sliver of explanation, you grab it, hold it, accept it, even if it doesn't feel right. Because something feels better than nothing. That's the trap. They create confusion, then offer the illusion of clarity, and you call it peace. But it's not peace. It's just the end of your questions. Not all control is loud. Some of it is barely visible. This is micro-manipulation, the small, consistent behaviors that change your patterns without you realizing. A sigh when you speak, a smirk when you share, a look that makes you feel foolish. They don't need to argue. They don't need to confront. They just react in ways that make you adjust. And you do. You stop mentioning certain topics. You stop asking for things. You start shrinking. Not because they told you to, but because they trained you to. Over time, you become smaller until you're easy to manage. That's the danger of micromanipulation. It doesn't hurt all at once. It wears you down in silence until you forget what it felt like to speak freely. You remember the unfinished, the unresolved, the almosts. This is the Zygarnik effect, the tendency to fixate on incomplete tasks more than completed ones. Manipulators use this to keep you hooked. They start a conversation, but don't finish it. They love you, but won't commit. They promise answers, but never deliver. And your brain keeps coming back, looping, obsessing, because your mind wants completion, resolution, closure, but they withhold it, dangle it. So you stay, you chase, you try harder, not because it's working, but because it hasn't ended. The power isn't in what they give you, it's in what they don't. And when the story never finishes, you never move on. You become what they expect of you, not because it's true, but because you've been treated like it is. This is the Pygmalion effect. When people's expectations subtly influence your behavior until you prove them right. It can be positive. A teacher believes in you, and you rise. But in manipulation, it's used to shape your identity from the outside in. They say you're lazy, so you hesitate. They say you're emotional, so you shrink your reactions. Eventually, you act in ways that align with their perception, not because it's who you are, but because it's what's been reinforced. And now they say, see, I told you. But they didn't discover your flaws. They cultivated them. You're not proving them right. You're proving you were listening.
You fail at something. It hurts. You want to move on, but they won't let you. This is reframing failure, a tactic where manipulators twist your low points into weapons. They don't let you grow from it. They define you by it. You always quit. Remember last time? You're not good at things like this. They keep you small by reminding you of when you were weak. They shrink your ambition by replaying your worst moments. So you stop trying. You play it safe. You stay in your lane. Because failure isn't just failure anymore. It's proof you're not enough. But here's the truth. Failure isn't a label. It's a lesson. And anyone who uses it to chain you isn't trying to help you grow. They're trying to make sure you never outgrow them. They're attractive, smart, charming. So you assume they're also kind, trustworthy, safe. That's the halo effect. When one positive trait makes you assume the rest are also good. Manipulators shine in this light. They dress well, speak smoothly, say the right things in front of the right people, and because of that, you overlook the warning signs, you excuse the red flags, you explain away the inconsistencies, you believe their kindness isn't strategic, it's who they are. But image isn't substance, style isn't truth, and charm is not character. The halo blinds you. So by the time it slips, you've already fallen for the illusion. You don't have time to think, to question, to breathe. This is time constraint manipulation, forcing decisions under pressure so you're more likely to comply. We need an answer now. I can't wait all day. You've got 5 minutes, or I'm gone. It feels urgent, important, but it's not. It's a tactic. Because when time is tight, logic fades, emotion spikes, and fear takes the wheel. You say yes, not because it's right, but because it ends the clock. But the deadline wasn't real. Only the pressure was. And when pressure replaces peace, manipulation wins. You're shown something bad. So the next thing feels good by comparison. This is the contrast principle, shaping perception by placing two things side by side. A toxic partner stops yelling. Now their silence feels like kindness. A manipulative boss stops micromanaging. Now their absence feels like trust. But nothing actually changed. Only your frame of reference did. They lowered the bar. So even average treatment feels like a reward. And over time, your standards shift. You accept crumbs. You call it growth. You survive the worst. So now the bare minimum feels generous. But it's not. It's still control, just quieter. You value things more when you build them, even if they're flawed, even if they cost you time, even if they hurt you. That's the IKEA effect, a cognitive bias where you overvalue what you put effort into, and manipulators love it. They make you work for their love, their attention, their approval, and the harder it is to earn, the more attached you become, not because it's worth more, but because you invested more. And now, you stay, you defend them, you say things like, it's not perfect, but we've been through so much. They're complicated, but I've put in the time. It took so long to get here. I can't leave now. But here's the truth. Just because something cost you doesn't mean it's valuable. Sometimes you're not protecting the relationship. You're protecting the effort you don't want to lose. You're choosing between two things. Then a third, less appealing option is introduced. Suddenly, your decision feels easier. Obvious, logical, but it's not. It's the decoy effect. When a weak third choice is added to manipulate you into picking the one they wanted all along, it's used in pricing, in marketing, in negotiations, but it also shows up in life. A manipulator gives you two bad options, then offers a third that's slightly better, but still not good. You choose it, grateful, relieved, but you were never in control. You were never free. You were just choosing between the traps they set. The decoy doesn't help you. It helps them make you feel like you chose, but you didn't. You reacted. You take something fake, but it works because you believe it will. This is the placebo effect, the power of belief to create real changes, even from lies. It's not just medical, it's emotional. Manipulators say what you want to hear, promise change, use healing words without doing the work. And for a while, you feel better. They're trying now. They said all the right things.
Maybe we're finally in a good place. But nothing real has shifted. You're not healing. You're hoping. You're not growing. You're waiting. And that brief relief, it's not proof of progress. It's proof of how badly you wanted it to work.
People fear loss more than they value gain. That's loss aversion. And it's why we'll cling to something toxic just to avoid the pain of letting go. Manipulators know this. They create routines, shared memories, emotional investments. Then they remind you what leaving will cost. You'll regret this. You'll never find someone like me. Everything we've built, gone, and suddenly, walking away feels like losing something instead of protecting yourself. That's the trick. You forget what they took. You focus on what you might lose next, even if what you're losing is the very thing that's hurting you. Touch is primal, comforting, disarming, and in the wrong hands, it's controlling. This is the power of touch, using physical closeness to build trust, silence doubt, or confuse emotions. They hug when they're caught, hold your hand when they lie, touch your back when you hesitate. It doesn't feel manipulative. It feels warm, familiar, safe. But that's the point. Touch bypasses words. It speaks to the nervous system. It regulates your panic, even when you should be panicking. And over time, you associate their touch with peace. So when they hurt you, but reach out, you melt. Because your body remembers safety, even when the truth says danger. And that's the scariest part. Your body believes them, even when your mind doesn't. You reveal something small, an insecurity, a mistake, a fear, and suddenly they're nicer to you. This is the foot in the mouth effect. When a manipulator increases compliance by making you feel safe after you've shown vulnerability, it starts with you opening up. They comfort you, agree with you, reassure you, and you feel seen. But underneath that empathy, they're building leverage, because once you've shared something real, you're more likely to agree, more likely to trust, more likely to obey. Not because you want to, but because they just made you feel human, and now you feel indebted. But connection isn't a contract, and comfort shouldn't cost you your boundaries. You own it. So now it feels valuable, not because it is, but because it's yours. That's the endowment effect, the bias that makes us overvalue anything we possess, including people, even if they're harmful, even if they lie, even if they tear you apart. You stay. You defend them because you've claimed them. And manipulators use this. They move fast, lock in labels, create titles. My partner, my best friend, my ride or die. So when things turn toxic, you don't walk away. You protect your investment. But possession isn't connection, and history doesn't equal worth. You don't owe loyalty to someone just because you once called them yours. They don't yell. They don't argue. They just go quiet. And somehow it hurts more. This is mind control through silence, when withdrawal becomes a form of punishment. They ignore your calls, leave your messages on read, suddenly stop touching you, looking at you, responding to you, and you spiral. You question everything, replay conversations, wonder if you've done something wrong. You reach out more, apologize for things you're not sure you did, and they say nothing. Because now, you're controlling yourself. That's the power of silence. It doesn't shout, it shapes. And once you've been trained to fear their distance, They don't have to ask for control. You'll hand it over just to bring the sound back. You're smart, but only when you agree with them. You're kind, but only when you do what they want. You're beautiful, but only when you look how they like. This is the compliment chain. When praise becomes a leash, it starts warm, affirming, empowering, but it's conditional. You start chasing compliments, changing yourself to keep earning them, editing your behavior to keep hearing, "That's the version of you I love." But real love isn't version specific. Real validation doesn't expire when you stop performing. Manipulators know you crave praise, so they feed it with strings attached. And the more you chase it, the more you forget who you were before the applause.
They tell you you're different, special, chosen. You feel elevated, important, essential. But it's not a compliment. It's a setup. This is identity inflation, artificially inflating your ego so you'll protect the person who made you feel powerful. They say, you're smarter than everyone else. You're the only one who gets it. You're not like those other people. It feels like empowerment, but it's isolation. Now, any disagreement feels like an attack on your identity. Any doubt feels like betrayal. You stop listening to others because you've been told they're all beneath you. You've been handed a crown just to be trapped by it. They didn't give you power. They gave you a cage made of flattery. You're not just making a choice. You're choosing whether to survive. That's the frame. This is survival framing. When manipulators present normal decisions as matters of life or death. If you leave, I don't know what I'll do. You're the only thing keeping me going. If you say no, this all falls apart. Suddenly, your needs feel selfish. Your boundaries feel dangerous. So you give in. You agree. You stay. Not because it's right, but because walking away feels like causing harm. But survival isn't your responsibility. Their fear isn't your burden. And no real love will ask you to destroy yourself so someone else can float. That's not connection. It's a hostage situation dressed in desperation. They cry, break down, tell you everything that's ever hurt them. It feels real, raw, like intimacy. But later, you notice something. The tears are always perfectly timed, right when they're losing control, right when you start asking questions, right when you're ready to walk. This is faux vulnerability, using manufactured emotional openness to regain power. It looks like softness, but it's strategy. They're not showing you pain. They're showing you what you need to see to stay. And once you've seen it, you back down. You feel guilty. You shift from truth to comforting them. But vulnerability isn't supposed to protect control. It's supposed to release it. And if their wounds only show up when you gain clarity, they're not sharing. They're acting. They like what you like, hate what you hate, want what you want. It feels like connection, but it's construction. This is psychological mimicry, when someone mirrors your values, language, and worldview to earn trust. They watch how you speak, copy how you dress, adopt your beliefs, but only on the surface. You feel understood, safe, aligned, but it's not real. They're learning you, to use you. And when the mask slips, you wonder who they really were. But here's the twist. They were never anyone. They became you, so they could control you. Because when someone wears your reflection long enough, you start loving the mirror, not realizing it was empty all along. They don't need to insult you. They just remind you of where you stand. They name drop, subtly flex, mention how others respect them, how others rely on them. You feel smaller, quieter, like you need to earn your place. This is status manipulation, when someone raises their own perceived value just to lower yours. In a group, they take up more space. In private, they position themselves as the expert. You're always the student, the lucky one, the one who should be grateful. So you comply. You over-explain. You try harder to be good enough for them. But power plays aren't always loud. Sometimes they just look like confidence, until you realize it only grows by shrinking you. And in that imbalance, they tighten their grip. They do something kind, say something beautiful, help you when you're down, and then they cash it in. After everything I've done for you, I was there when no one else was. You owe me this. This is emotional debt creation, when acts of kindness are disguised investments. You didn't ask for it. You didn't agree to it. But now you feel owned. You tolerate bad behavior. You stay longer. You keep the peace because they were once there for you. But real help doesn't come with strings. Real love doesn't track favors. Manipulators give not to support you, but to hold something over you. And when the interest comes due, you realize the cost was higher than you ever imagined. Everyone wants to feel special, unique, powerful. It's human, it's normal, and it's dangerous. This is ego flattery as a trap, a technique that makes you feel seen, but only to be used. It starts soft. They say you're rare, smarter than the rest, more insightful, more evolved. They tell you no one else gets it, only you. At first, it's affirming. Then it becomes isolating. Because now, if you question them, you're just like the others. If you speak out, you're proving you're not so special after all. The praise becomes a prison. Every compliment is tied to obedience. They say, "You're brilliant. I knew you'd understand why I did that. You're not like those emotional people. That's why I can trust you. You're stronger than most, so don't let this shake you." It feels like validation. It sounds like love, but it's shaping your behavior, piece by piece. Because now being chosen comes with expectations. Now being better means staying silent. Being mature means accepting pain without flinching. And once you've tied your self-worth to their praise, you'll do anything to keep it coming, even when it hurts, even when you know better. They don't need to manipulate your decisions anymore. They just need to threaten your identity. At first, you still had your own style, your voice, your friends, your routines. But over time, things shift. You stop wearing what you like. You stop seeing people who challenge them. You stop doing the things that once lit you up. This is the erosion of personal identity, not through force, but through constant, quiet subtraction. They never told you who to be. They just rolled their eyes when you were yourself. They teased your music taste, scoffed at your hobbies, mocked your old goals, and slowly, you adjusted just to keep the peace, just to make them smile, just to feel enough. At first, it feels like compromise. But eventually, you look in the mirror and don't know who's staring back. Your laugh sounds different. Your confidence is gone. Your world now revolves around keeping them stable, not you. And the scariest part, you did it willingly. You let go of yourself in the name of love or harmony or understanding. But real love doesn't erase you. Real connection doesn't require abandonment. If someone loves a version of you that looks nothing like the real thing, they don't love you. They love your absence. Guilt doesn't always feel like a knife. Sometimes it feels like a whisper. I didn't sleep last night because of what you said. I just wanted to make you proud. I guess I'm just a burden. And you, tired, confused, trying to make it right, begin to change. You become careful, cautious, controlled. This is guilt-based rewiring. When someone trains you to adjust your behavior by making you feel responsible for their pain, you don't want to upset them. So you stay quiet. You avoid certain words. You carry their emotions like a second skin. They don't need to ask you to change. They just show you how hurt they are when you don't. And over time, your inner compass breaks. You stop asking, is this healthy? And start asking, will this hurt them? Their emotions become your map. Their guilt becomes your chain. And eventually, you stop feeling like a person. You feel like a walking apology. But the truth is, you were never the villain. You just became the one who took responsibility for everything because someone else refused to take responsibility for anything. They're not yelling, not hitting, not cheating. They're nice. They remember your birthday, text you goodnight, support your dreams. At first. But still, you feel off, unsettled, small. This is the nice guy trap, when someone hides manipulation under the mask of kindness. They never do anything bad, but everything they do is transactional. They expect praise for basic respect. They weaponize decency. They treat love like a currency. And every act is an investment. After how good I've been to you, I've never treated anyone the way I've treated you. Any other girl would be lucky to have me. Suddenly, your discomfort feels unjustified. Your instincts feel rude. Your no feels ungrateful because they're nice. But niceness without respect isn't goodness. It's performance. And when you start believing you owe someone for not hurting you, you're already in the trap. Real love doesn't ask for applause. It doesn't need a scoreboard. And it definitely doesn't make you feel guilty for listening to your gut. It starts the same way every time. Tension, withdrawal, conflict, then affection, warmth, connection, and you feel relieved, grateful, safe, until it happens again. This is a psychological dependency loop, the cycle of chaos and reward that creates emotional addiction. It's not random. They hurt you, then soothe you. They withhold, then flood you with attention. And your brain, trying to survive the pattern, starts confusing relief with love. The more painful the drop, the more euphoric the return. You stop chasing peace. You start chasing the reunion. You know it's wrong, but the high is too powerful. The relief is too sweet. And over time, you don't leave because you love them. You stay because you're addicted to the escape from pain they created in the first place. But if someone builds the fire just to be the one who saves you from it, they were never the hero. They were the arsonist. It doesn't happen all at once. First, you cancel a plan, then you stop calling, then you start to believe your friends wouldn't understand anyway. This is emotional isolation, when a manipulator subtly cuts you off from support systems so they become your only source of comfort and pain. It starts with seeds of doubt. I don't like how they talk to you. They don't really care about you. I'm the only one who truly gets you. At first, it sounds protective, caring, but behind the concern is a motive to weaken your external roots. They don't want competition, not for your time, not for your trust, not for your love. So they create conflict, invent drama, or just wear you down until the effort of connection feels too heavy to carry. And once you're isolated, you depend on them for emotional regulation, for feedback, for truth. You don't reach out anymore. You don't vent. You don't ask for outside perspectives because you've been trained to believe no one else will understand. Only they will. But that isn't intimacy. That's containment. And when they become your only lifeline, you stop swimming. You just grip tighter, even when they're the ones pulling you under. You set a limit. They smile. They say, okay, but the next day, they cross it. It was just a joke. You're being dramatic. I thought you meant only sometimes. This is boundary sabotage, the process of eroding your limits until you no longer trust yourself to have any. It starts with small violations, a tease, a late response, an accidental overshare. You speak up, they brush it off. You explain again, they shift the blame. Eventually, you stop mentioning it altogether because now you feel embarrassed to hold a boundary, like it's unreasonable, like you are the problem. So the line fades. You make exceptions. You start saying things like, it's not a big deal. They didn't mean it. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. But the truth is, you weren't. You were right to set that boundary. It was real. It mattered. They just wore you down until it didn't. Because when you stop reinforcing your limits, they don't need to break them. They just walk through you like an open door. They show up as a dream, charming, attentive, wildly romantic. They ask about your goals. They match your values. They say things like, you're exactly what I've been looking for. This is fantasy construction, when a manipulator builds a version of themselves that mirrors your ideal partner, just long enough to get inside. They don't lie outright. They perform. They create a persona that fits you perfectly, says all the right things, gives all the right signs, but it isn't real. It's a projection, a costume, a character written from your own desires. And once you're in, once you trust it, once you invest, the mask cracks, the fantasy fades, and what's underneath is need, is control, is someone who never planned to keep that illusion, only use it to secure you. And now, you're grieving something that never existed, trying to resurrect a dream that was designed to disappear. But here's the twist. They never loved you. They loved how easy it was to become the person you'd never walk away from. They tell you the truth. Sometimes. They open up, reveal a painful story, admit a dark detail, and you think, if they're being this honest, they must be trustworthy. But that's the trick. This is selective honesty. When a manipulator shares partial truths to appear authentic while still concealing their full agenda. They're not lying, not directly. They're curating honesty They tell you about the bad childhood, but not about how they learned to exploit sympathy. They admit to hurting someone once, but frame it as a misunderstanding. They tell you what they did wrong, but skip what they're still doing wrong. And now you trust them, because vulnerability equals credibility, right? Wrong. True honesty comes with risk. Selective honesty comes with strategy. It's not about transparency. It's about building just enough trust to make you ignore the rest. They don't control you with fear. They control you with image. They walk into a room and take up space. They talk like they know more than you. They carry an air of authority that makes you second-guess your instincts. This is power projection. When someone uses tone, posture, vocabulary, and presence to create the illusion of superiority, they never have to say, "I'm smarter than you." They just imply it with confidence, with silence, with how they tilt their head when you speak, like they already know you're wrong. You begin to defer, to question your choices, to shrink just a little, because they seem like they have it together. But that's the illusion. It's not real power. It's theatrics. True strength doesn't demand silence. It invites dialogue. And anyone who needs to feel taller by standing on your uncertainty isn't powerful. They're just performing confidence to cover their fear of being seen. They don't raise their voice. They raise their purpose. This is what God wants. The universe brought us together for a reason. This is part of your spiritual journey. Don't resist it. This is spiritual manipulation. When someone uses beliefs, morality, or higher power language to suppress resistance and enforce control, they wrap abuse in sacred language. They paint obedience as enlightenment. They twist faith into fear. You're told your suffering is a lesson, that their cruelty is growth, that your doubts are simply spiritual immaturity. It doesn't matter the religion, or even if there is one. It can be God, or energy, or destiny. What matters is this: they've removed the argument. Because now, it's not just between you and them. It's between you and the divine. And how can you walk away from that? You stay in pain because they said it has a purpose. You silence your instincts because they said your ego is getting in the way. But real spirituality doesn't erase your boundaries. It doesn't demand submission to someone else's will. It reconnects you to your own. If your soul feels smaller every time they speak for the divine, they're not spiritual. They're possessive. They don't give you happiness. They give you promises of happiness, vacations, weddings, careers, healing, all in the future. This is future faking, when a manipulator keeps you hooked by painting a beautiful tomorrow while doing nothing to build it. They talk about where you'll go, what you'll become, how things will be better once we're out of debt, once work slows down, once we fix this one last thing. And you hold on because it sounds good. It sounds like hope. But hope without action is bait. And they're not building a life. They're building a treadmill. You keep moving, working, believing, but the vision never arrives because it was never meant to. They only offer the future when the present gets too hard to justify. They only make plans when you're ready to leave. They only describe love. They don't give it. And one day you realize the future they promised was just a leash made of light. You feel like you can't leave, like something bigger than logic is keeping you there, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. This is trauma bonding, the intense emotional attachment that forms through cycles of abuse, followed by brief moments of connection. They break you, then hold you while you cry. They attack you, then whisper that they're scared to lose you. And you cling, because your nervous system is now addicted to the highs and lows. Love doesn't feel calm anymore. It feels like relief. You start believing the chaos is passion, the pain is depth, the survival is loyalty. You think, no one else will understand this. We've been through so much. It must mean something. I can't leave now. Not after everything. But trauma isn't proof of love. It's proof of wounding. And what you're calling fate is just a bond built in the fire they lit. They don't need to trap you with kindness. They just need to hurt you, then heal you, again and again, until you forget what peace even feels like. They show up with answers, with strategies, with a savior complex masked as support. This is the fixer persona. When someone gains control by becoming your emotional technician, they ask deep questions. They offer insights. They say, I've never seen anyone like you, but I know how to help. At first, it feels healing. You feel seen, guided. But over time, you become their project, not their partner, not their equal, their assignment. They build dependency by creating the illusion that only they can fix what's broken inside you. I'm the only one who understands you. You're making progress. Don't sabotage it. Why are you pulling away? We're so close to a breakthrough, but you're not growing. You're being shaped into someone more compliant, more grateful, more dependent. You were never broken. You were just hurting. And they didn't show up to lift you. They showed up to hold your healing hostage, so you'd never stop needing them. You call them out. You tell them what they did. And instead of denying it, they agree. You're right. I'm awful. You deserve better than me. But the apology feels off. Too fast. Too dramatic. Too rehearsed. This is reverse gaslighting. When a manipulator agrees with your reality, only to twist it into your guilt. They say all the right things, but they say them to end the conversation. They overown it, so you end up comforting them. Don't say that. You're not a bad person. You just made a mistake. It's okay. I didn't mean to make you feel so awful. And just like that, you're no longer expressing pain. You're soothing the person who caused it. You become the caretaker, the stabilizer, the forgiver. Even when your truth was valid, even when your anger was justified, they've deflected your fire by making themselves the ashes. But remorse without change is manipulation. And if they always feel bad, but never get better, they're not healing. They're hiding. They don't control you by limiting you. They control you by protecting you. I just want to keep you safe. You don't need that stress right now. Let me handle it. I know what's best. This is control through protection. When someone uses care and concern as a smokescreen for restriction, they don't say, you can't go out. They say it's dangerous. They don't say you can't talk to someone. They say that person's a bad influence. It doesn't sound abusive. It sounds loving. And that's why it works. Because now if you resist, you're not standing up for yourself. You're being reckless. You're being selfish. You're being naive. But real protection doesn't come with a cage. It doesn't shrink your world. It doesn't isolate you from your freedom. If someone is wrapping chains in velvet and calling it safety, they don't want you protected. They want you contained. They didn't lie. They just didn't tell you everything. This is gaslighting by omission, manipulating reality by withholding critical details, then pretending your reaction is unjustified. You feel confused, like something's missing. And when you ask, they say, "I didn't think it was important." You never asked. I didn't want to upset you. But the omission was calculated. They leave out context. They skip the part where they started the fight, or that they saw their ex, or that they made a choice you wouldn't have agreed with. And now, you're reacting to half a story. You feel too emotional, too paranoid, too intense, because the truth would have made your feelings make sense. But they removed just enough of it to make you question your own sanity. They didn't distort the facts. They cropped them. And in that silence, they built the perfect lie. You speak up. You express hurt. You name the wound. And they say, "You're overreacting. You're too sensitive. Can't you take a joke?" This is the "you're too sensitive" tactic. When someone invalidates your pain to dodge accountability, it's not an apology. It's a redirection. Now, the conversation isn't about what they did. It's about how you responded. They shift the focus from their behavior to your reaction. You start questioning your feelings. You wonder if you're dramatic. You think maybe you are the problem, but you're not. Your sensitivity isn't a flaw. It's a radar. It's data. It tells you when something's off, when something hurts. And if someone constantly dismisses that pain, they're not protecting your peace. They're training you to stay quiet. You feel exhausted, not physically, emotionally, spiritually. Every interaction leaves you tired. This is energy draining. When someone constantly pulls from your emotional reserves without giving anything back. They vent, they cry, they spiral, and you always absorb. You're their fixer, their container, their counselor. And when you need support, they disappear. They change the subject. They remind you that they've had it worse. So you give more. Try harder. Push yourself beyond what's healthy, just to keep them okay. But the more you give, the more they expect. And eventually, you stop noticing how drained you are, because you've accepted that depletion is just the cost of keeping them stable. But love shouldn't empty you. Connection shouldn't feel like bleeding out quietly. If someone always feels lighter when you leave, check if they left their weight on you. They don't just manipulate you, they manipulate your image of them. This is reputation management. When someone crafts a public persona so carefully that your private experience starts to feel unbelievable. They're charming, helpful, loved by everyone. So when you tell your story, people say, "That doesn't sound like them. They're such a good person. You must be misunderstanding." Now you're isolated, not just in the relationship, but in the aftermath. You start doubting yourself, wondering if you are the problem, but you're not. You were just dealing with someone who knew how to shine in the spotlight and rot in the dark. Their kindness in public wasn't proof of character. It was camouflage. They needed the world to love them so no one would believe you when you stopped. They apologize, not because they mean it, but because it's the smartest move. This is strategic apology, when someone uses sorry to reset the power dynamic, not repair the damage. It sounds perfect, carefully worded, emotionally tuned. They might even cry, but look closer. They're apologizing just before you leave, just after you call them out, just when they realize they're about to lose control. It's not remorse, it's reinforcement. The apology becomes evidence in their favor. I owned up to it. I'm trying. Why are you still bringing it up? And now your pain has an expiration date. You're not allowed to hurt anymore. Not after they said sorry, but true apologies don't demand silence. They don't rush your healing. They don't weaponize forgiveness. If someone says sorry only when silence becomes inconvenient, they're not apologizing. They're bargaining. One day, they're warm. The next, ice. Then love. Then rage. Then nothing at all. This is manufactured chaos. When someone destabilizes your emotional baseline so they can become the only constant. It's not clumsiness. It's not mood swings. It's design. You never know what version of them you'll get. So you stay hyper alert, always adjusting, always overthinking. And when the chaos hits a peak, they offer peace, a hug, a soft apology, a quiet night. And it feels like a miracle because your world has been on fire and they just gave you water. But here's the twist. They lit the fire. They create instability so you'll rely on them for relief. It's not love. It's weather control. They storm. They calm. They want to be with you all the time. They need your opinion on everything. They can't imagine life without you. It feels flattering, romantic, deep, but it's not. This is dependency disguised as love. When attachment is sold as intimacy, but really hides insecurity and control, you stop having separate thoughts, separate time, separate needs, because every move becomes collective. Why would you do that without me? We're supposed to be a team. You don't love me as much as I love you. And suddenly your individuality is disloyalty. Your space is rejection. Your no is betrayal. But love doesn't erase your edges. It doesn't melt your autonomy. If someone loves you only when you're attached, it's not love. It's need. And you are not a crutch. You are not a solution. You are not someone else's reason for waking up. You are a whole person, not a half heart holding another up. They hurt you, and you tell the story. Then they tell their version. And suddenly, everything shifts. This is narrative rewriting, when a manipulator recasts events to suit their image while making you doubt your own memory. They say, that's not how it happened. You're remembering it wrong. It wasn't a big deal at the time. Why now? They don't argue the facts. They reshape them, twist the details, insert missing context, replace your interpretation with theirs. And because you want to be fair, you listen, you consider, you doubt, until eventually you stop being sure what really happened. And that's the point. If they can change the story, they can change your identity in it, from victim to overreactor, from advocate to aggressor, from brave to too emotional. But your memory is not fiction. Your voice is not unreliable. And your pain is not a plot hole. You are the author of your truth. even when they try to rewrite the ending. It doesn't look like hypnosis. It doesn't feel like control. But you don't dress the same. You don't speak the same. You don't even think the same. This is mind control, the slow, subtle reshaping of a person's thoughts, language, and desires. It doesn't happen with commands. It happens with repetition. They question your choices until you stop making them. They criticize your friends until you stop calling them. They ridicule your beliefs until you stop speaking them. And at first, you argue, you resist, you fight back. But it gets tiring, so you start changing, just to keep the peace, just to avoid another fight, just to feel loved. And one day, you realize you haven't been yourself in months. You've been a version of yourself they approve of. That's not growth. That's erasure. And the most terrifying part, you thought you were choosing it, but you were just becoming what they could tolerate. You catch them, you see the pattern, you confront them, and they say, "What are you talking about? I don't get it. You're reading too much into things." This is playing dumb, the final line of defense. When all else fails, the manipulator feigns confusion to invalidate your reality. They act innocent, confused, amused even, and now you're explaining, defending, over-explaining. And just like that, the power flips. Because you're no longer holding them accountable. You're justifying your perception. They didn't admit. They didn't deny. They just dodged by pretending they don't even understand. But they do. They just know that pretending not to know makes you feel crazy. It recenters the conversation. It disarms your clarity. It buys them time. And worst of all, it makes you doubt the one thing they never earned, your insight.